On this episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone, we're gonna have another Tuesday wrestling. So we got something new that I did not expect. We're gonna have the return of TNA that only broadcasts for an hour right after Impact, but also a match that NWA actually put out that explains certain things that took place at the pop-up event that they posted. So get yourself some candy and a soda. Get ready to watch Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up. 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 Get up, get up.
Hello, everyone. This is J Rod here. Happy April Fool's Day. Well, I don't do April Fool's Day on this channel because I'm not really good at April Fools. Only if I come up with something. As you know, you may have saw this on Twitter. AEW played another April Fool jokes twice on their Twitter. One where they said that Excalibur just joined Death Triangle, calling themselves the Cuadro de Muerte, which is the squared or Death Squared or whatever. It was all a joke, and they did the same thing again this time because with 16 wrestlers and 6 tigers in a steel cage, and there was no way that's for real because you know they're not gonna allow that. And plus, people are still talking about that whole Tiger King thing you've been seeing on Netflix. The one where about those people that have the sanctuaries and all that are bad. Like Joe Exotic, Carol Baskin, and Doc. Well, that's what's been going on. But I don't do jokes on this channel because I don't feel too compelled to do it for all of you guys because it's not fair. And plus, we're dealing with the whole crisis of the pandemic. I don't think it's a good time for me to do that right now. But we have another Tuesday wrestling episode for you guys. So this one is a very special and different one because I normally do only 3, but this time it's 4. So let's get started with AEW Dark. Right. So on this very special episode of AEW Dark, this of one kind of took me back to WWF. If you guys remember, if you guys been around that long, back in the day, WWF used to have like their top heels, their faces facing people, as we called the jobbers. I felt like it was that each match that took place because that's what it felt to me during that time. So, but as you must know right now, this episode of AEW Dark will be the last time we see them at Daly's place at the moment. Reason because of the restrictions that's been going on in Florida. Um, Apparently they found a secret location. So next AEW Dark is going to be in a secret location, but they never specify where. So let's go from start to finish on this particular episode of AEW Dark. So it started out with the first match, Sammy Guevara versus Matt Sells. I'm not too familiarized with Matt Sells, but let's just skip ahead. Everybody would guess Sammy won this one. Next match, we had Sean Spears versus Sean Dean. This guy, they explained him a lot that he was a part of the U.S. Navy. That's pretty good. But as always, Sean Spears was there. Tully Blanchard was not there by his side because if you recall, AEW made it clear that wrestlers have the right to decide not to come into work because of what's been going on recently. So we can understand that. Then we had Darby Allin versus Preston Vance. Now, here's the interesting part about Preston Vance. I thought I saw this guy on the last week of Dynamite because he was in that one room with Sean Spears and the Guns Club during when they were making bets who was going to win the matches. I only saw him for maybe a few moments. I'm not sure if it was him. Hopefully it was him. I just don't know if I'm right or wrong. I make mistakes sometimes. And then finally, we had John Moxley versus Fabu Andre, and you guys probably can guess it. Moxley won. But post match, we had Jake Hager. If you recall, on the last week of Dynamite, Moxley attacked Hagar, telling the inner circle that he would come after them on their blind spots, and he wasn't wrong. So he did attack them on the blind spots. As for Hagar, he did the same thing. He put him in that submission that he used, making him not breathe. So basically, there is a chance we may see Hagar versus John Moxley down the line for the AEW title. Now, like I said, I don't think Jericho would care if Hagar has the title. The only thing that he would care about if it's back in the inner circle where it belongs. That's how I would see it. But we have seen certain factions, like for example, Evolution. If you recall, Randy Orton won the world title, but Triple H decided to go this, so they betrayed Randy because of that. Because Triple H can't stand the fact that someone else has something that belongs to him. I don't think Jericho's like that. He just wants to prove that the inner circle are the most dominant force the AEW hasn't seen. But I'm that's what my assumption is going to happen between Moxley and Hagar. But we just got to wait and see what's going to happen on the upcoming Dynamite show. I'm excited to see that. So let's so that's it for now for the AEW stuff. Um, so like I said, their upcoming episode, it's in a secret location. We don't know where. So I think that's it for now. Let's keep on moving with the National Wrestling Alliance. Okay then. Now, as you know, the National Wrestling Alliance suspended all operations because of the whole thing with the pandemic and all this other stuff. But in the last 2 weeks, they broadcast, or should I say, now this third week, they streamed several events. The first one they broadcast was the NWA 70, which is the part two match between Cody and Nick Aldis. Then there was the pop up event slash New Year's clash between. It was the one where they had Nick Aldis faces James Storm for the title. But that particular event had something that kind of made perfect sense. Now, let me go back to that particular one that I talked about the last time. You see, in this particular one event, David Arquette, if you guys remember him, he was in a match between Josephus and whoever his mystery partner is. So the bet was whoever loses, they get their hairs cut. So Josephus has been attacking David Arquette, trying to prove he didn't belong where he as a wrestler and all this and that. But David Arquette has always been a fan, and he loved wrestling, and that's why it's important. Now, David Arquette asked Josephus who was his partner, so that partner of his was this lady, bald head, named the Spiritual Advisor. But David Arquette fooled Josephus, saying that he has himself a partner. Now, he didn't know he was, but he's saying, you know him. Everybody knows him. They love him. You know him personally. He said he was a former NWA World Champion, and he's going to be a future. And that person was Tim Storm. Now, I didn't know what history they were referring to until they uploaded this past Tuesday, which is today is Wednesday, April 1st, where explain the history of a rivalry between both Josephus and Tim Storm. Josephus been attacking him for months until they finally had a match. There was on in Orlando, if you remember back in the day, where TNA used to film their live shows back in the day with AJ Styles and all those other great wrestlers at the time. Um, it was an empty arena match. This is what led to the rivalry that David Arquette was talking about. This one was like balls to the wall, brutal match. Anything goes. He used tables, chairs, ladders, the whole shebang, whatever he was trying to do. And of course, Tim was still dealing with the fact. I mean, people, would say Tim Storm shouldn't be getting involved in matches like this because of his age. I mean, yeah, I could understand that, but he wants to see if he can last long with whatever he's still got left in the tank. I mean, he's in good shape, but I don't know if his body can take so much, because we can talk about that. But I'm going to tell you who the winner is. It was Josephus. He won. He was all happy, but we all know what happened later on. This event took place on January of 2018. Now, they didn't say what specific date, they only specified the month and year. But I will put that match on the description down below um, once I upload this for all of you guys, so you guys can see exactly what happened. So I think that's it, because I know uh, NWA are trying to put up some old content because they don't want to push forward with their newer stuff while we're still dealing with the pandemic. They had to put everything on hold. I know some promotions are doing that. Impact Wrestling are currently doing that right now. They postponed lockdown, but we'll just wait and see what they're gonna do next on the next week. Hope it's good. So let's move on with Impact Wrestling. All right, so let's start with Impact Wrestling. So start out with the recap of what happened between Su Young and Jessica Havoc and Father James Mitchell. Now, if you recall, Su Young had her final battle with Jessica Havoc, and Father James Mitchell sent both of them to the Undead Wasteland, which is like the point of no return. Rosemary helped them. Su Young was on the verge of killing Father James Mitchell, but Jessica Havoc stopped her. But instead, she decided to do it herself, which was crazy. And then at the end, you see Father James Mitchell going to heaven. He's like, "Who booked this shit?" It was so funny. I thought it was like hilarious. But yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen with Havoc or Su Young, because if you recall, Su Young is no longer with Impact Wrestling. She's now a free agent, so that means she can work. So this is prior before she left. So I'm assuming that these guys actually do taping prior before they broadcast it on the AXS network. So I don't know how far along they go for. Now the first match they had, it was one half of the current tag team champions, the North, Josh Alexander, to set the face off with uh, Eddie Edwards. Ethan Page was right there as always, but there were certain spots that Ethan was trying to prevent Edwards from using against Josh Alexander. Ethan's always been the guy watching his back, while Eddie Edwards didn't have anybody watching his back because he's real crazy. That's how they were putting out. Um, Eddie was this close of winning against Josh Alexander, but it didn't. He lost. But right after the match was done, it was a 2-on-1 situation. The North taking out on Eddie Edwards, and here comes the Impact World Champion, Tessa, making the save, and it was great to see her do that. But at the same time, when after this was happening, Ethan Page was not happy. Now, he's always trying to bring out this ego of his, thinking that he did the right thing in protecting the North because they are world champions. But what he did not appreciate is Tessa sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Now, she didn't do it because she wanted to. She wants to make sure Eddie Edwards stays in shape for their match at Rebellion in a triple threat alongside with Michael Elgin. So Ethan Page wanted a match between the two. So it was great. So it was already booked for the night. The next match, this one was the one I mentioned yesterday on the news update, with Kylie Ray making her return, facing off Cassandra Golden, someone that I heard was currently in development with Border City Wrestling down in Canada. If you must know, that promotion is currently has an alliance with Impact since is in Canada, like that type of thing. But it was great seeing her. I forgot to mention throughout this entire the commentators was Josh Matthews and of course Madison Rain. If you guys must know in real life, those two are married. Yeah. But Madison Rain did stated that she's very happy to see her in Impact because they know that she can bring something good to the table, and they're not wrong. I mean, we've seen her with AEW how she was only for one event, but that's a conversation we can talk about Kylie Ray. But she was fantastic. She pulled out all the stops and all this other stuff, and it was great. So she won the match. But post match, there was an interview with her and Jimmy Jacobs, and she confirmed now, and I mentioned she signed a long-term contract with Impact Wrestling, which is great. I mean, people, I should say this right now. I'm going to pause this. For all you fans out there, please stop criticizing. What do you think you know what happened? According to Tony Khan, it was an amicable split. Nothing bad happened. But Nico mentioned this to me. Probably the reason she left was because AEW were planning to make her become the first ever AEW World Women's Champion. But I think she was in a lot of pressure over that because that's a big responsibility. I mean, you're supposed to make the wave, and that's something that Gail Kim has done in the past, and I'll mention her later on the upcoming segment in this episode. So we showed a flashback moment of the week at TNA's Sacrifice of 2008. This segment was part of what people call the Steiner math. If you all recall that um, Scott Steiner was giving like a little math, um, how to say, how the odds work in his favor, that type of thing. That kind of reminds me of Left Eye from TLC, but but it was great seeing that moment. And then we have Moose coming out, still ranting about TNA because he is sick and tired of people talking about TNA. He's declaring himself as Mr. Impact. That no one cares about TNA. Everybody should just shut up and talk about him. But while he was talking all this, here comes a TNA veteran, Kid Cash, who we now call him Dave, Kid Cash, who told him that Moose could never hold up his weight on this one. Basically, like, how do I say? TNA was far more better for. I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, I am a fan of TNA of that time before they became Impact. That's what got me into it, long time ago. But then it turned into a match between Moose and Kid Cash. I mean, it was great seeing Kid Cash doing still some moves, but wasn't enough, so he lost against Moose. Then we see an interview with a brand new tag team called Triple XL, consisted with Larry D and AC Romero. Now these guys are ready to take on the tag team division, but they were told by TJP and Falabal that to stand in the back of the line from them. Basically, they're the ones next. I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, we have seen TJP and Falabal have been great. They were so close in winning those tag team titles from the North. But we just gotta wait and see what's gonna happen. I'm excited, but I'm also curious to see Triple XL go to action. Um, then we have another interview, but this time it was coming via satellite. Rich Swann. Now they questioned him about what does he think about Willie Mack being the number one contender for the X division, and what does it mean for the relationship? Now, Rich Swann knows right now he is not incapable of being there right now due to the injury, but he says he has to do what he can to move forward with his career, and he feels that this is going to be a perfect opportunity to show the world who he is. And that whole thing with the tag between those two as a tag team, they will have to put that on hold for the time being. And out of nowhere, here comes Ace Austin, who's trying to make like be more cynical or whatever you want to call it, like telling Rich Swann, "Where is Willie Mack? Why is he not taking care of you?" He's trying to put like saying that Willie Mack is not being a good friend. He thinks that he knows him better. But at the same time, while this was happening, Ace Austin sent Reno Scum to Orlando to give a little message. And they took out a Rich Swann right there. And Willie was not too pleased with Ace Austin's actions, sending Reno Scum to hurt him. So there'll be a time he will get his hands on him. Then we have what's his name, Sami Callihan coming out. After he explains his actions and like why did he fireball Ken Shamrock 2 weeks ago? He said that some companies or the other companies are putting guys like him who should be at the top, giving old guys like Shamrock to go to the top. And that bothered him. And he's willing to take on those people that are taking their spots. So basically, it's more like us versus them type of scenario. But let me tell you something. During this little thing, Josh Matthews made one excellent point. He never mentioned about OVE if they're gonna unite or whatever. And that was the case that kind of drew my attention. But when this happened, when Sammy was talking, here comes Tommy Dreamer giving a piece of his mind. Who he wasn't there for his own amusement. He was there to fight for all of the veterans like himself and Shamrock, that he's fighting for them. And it turned into a match, no rules. Basically, anything goes. It was kind of like, or should I call it the ECW rules? But it was great seeing it. But at the same time, uh, Callum won the match, but he was trying to take out Dreamer. And here comes Rhino trying to help his friend. But out of nowhere, here comes OVE, Jake and Dave Chris, along with Madman Fulton, attacking them. They were all happy they were back together, but Sammy just disappeared. He just clicked the remote and he just vanished. But this is what Josh Matthews talked about. Why he hasn't mentioned these guys? Why is he distancing himself from OVE? It doesn't make no sense. Those guys were like tight. I mean, I have to say this story with Sammy is kind of interesting because we don't know what he's trying to do. We know what his motives are. But what does it mean for OVE? Are they tight than ever? Or they're done? I'm really curious to see that. What's going on? Then we move on to a little segment with Rosemary again. Drinking her life away. She still feels a little sad and depressed knowing that she thought that with Su Yung bring back, it kind of brought her back. She could never bring back the bunny. The demon bunny. So sad. It was so hilarious. It feels like one of those sitcom shows. I don't know. They should put it. Rosemary at the bar. And then we see Susie. Yes, Susie, the good side of Su Yung. She's like, "Hello, I'm Susie," and everybody runs away. And then she bumps into the Deaners, and they're like, like scared of her because they know it's Su Yung. They know she can come back. So it's still unclear what is going on. How did Su Yung transformed to Susie? If y'all recall, the reason Su Yung became Susie was because of Havoc. She killed her. But it was funny. I enjoyed it. And then we go to the next match between Joseph Ryan, or as we know him, Joey Ryan, versus Cody Deaner. Now, Joseph Ryan is part of the group called Cancel Culture along with RVD and Katie Forbes. So basically, he wants to cancel Cody Deaner. And Deaner's like, "Why am I being canceled?" Last week was like a joke, all this other stuff, and it was funny. But there was a moment where cousin Jake poured beer into Joseph's mouth, making sure that Cody wins, and it was so fun. So Cody Deaner won the match, all thanks to cousin Jake, which is good. Now we go to the back where Tessa Blanchard's getting ready for her match, but Eddie Edwards offer her to be by her side during the match because he knows how the North thinks. If one guy is in the match and the other, but Tessa declined due to the fact she felt like she can do things on her own. I mean, who could blame her? I mean, we have known this was going to happen. So we jump into the match between Tessa Blanchard and Ethan Page. So it was a great match. Great, brutal. I don't think Ethan Page actually hold back because I know Impact are stepping the line into trying to make themselves have intergender matches because that's something that they're willing to take a leap of faith in. So it was great. I enjoyed it, but of course, as always, Josh Alexander's trying to interfere. There was a time he nearly had it, but Eddie Edwards came out for the help and give Tessa the win. Now, as soon as it was over, Eddie was about to give her back her title. Here comes Michael Elgin, who's still obsessed of becoming champion. That's what he was doing. And it's always been the case for Michael Elgin. He feels that he should be champion. He's willing to take that away from Tessa and make sure Eddie doesn't become champion. But at the same time, Tessa and Eddie worked together to take him out. And it worked. But we just got to wait and see how long this will last between the two because, as you all know, they may be an alliance now, but soon they will be enemies in that one match. So I think that's it for now. Now, to connect this, they had the broadcast an hour event of TNA. So let's start with the TNA event. So as you know, TNA is back for a one in a lifetime on the air. Now, before I move forward, I must remind all of you they were planning for this week to do a TNA show for WrestleCon called There's No Place Like Home. They had everything planned out, the matches, but this event has been canceled, or should I say postponed. So we don't know when that will happen because of the current crisis with the pandemic. But to me, seeing this show for an hour on TV was great. Seeing some of the older veteran wrestlers who were involved in TNA being in matches, but there was one match that kind of surprised me. I didn't think of it, but we have to talk about it because, like I said, it's Tuesday wrestling. Um, I have to. I can't say no. So it starts out with Hernandez versus Chase Stevens. Now, if you don't remember Hernandez, he played a great role being part of TNA. Him and Homicide and Conan as LAX being tag team champions. Then Chase Stevens, he was part of a group called the Naturals. They were tag team champions. Great two guys who've been tag team special for a long time. And it, I mean, they look like they're still in good shape. And of course, seeing Hernandez was great. And of course, Hernandez won the match. I have to say, great to see some TNA stuff. Then we jump into back to memory lane about the TNA Knockouts division. Like, remember, this is nothing compared. The Knockouts were nothing compared to what WWE did in the beginning. The Divas. I mean, who remembers that? TNA were not playing that game with the Divas, like having women be in swimsuits or all this other stuff. They were trying to show, okay, we can put the beauty and the bronze together. That is something that WWE failed to do back in the day, and TNA were doing that. But you know who felt like it was right at home throughout the entire time? Gail Kim. If you all don't recall, ever since I saw Gail Kim, this is my opinion. She didn't seem like the kind of woman who should be doing that whole bikini thing. It wasn't like her when I first laid eyes on her. She seems like she wants to prove she can be good as the boys, and there's nothing wrong with that. But TNA has given her those opportunities that WWE never did, and it makes sense. She never will work with other companies other than Impact and TNA, so that's one of the things that makes it more sense. I mean, we did have some wrestlers that were involved, like Mickey James. She was in it too. We had Lacey Von Erich, Velvet Sky, Angelina Jove, Awesome Kong. We had many others, and of course Madison Rain. Who can forget that? And that is what the reason what makes the Knockouts division better. And of course, who could forget Gail Kim being the first ever Knockouts champion? And then we go to the interview with Gail Kim, explaining how proud she was that she took part of TNA becoming the first ever Knockouts champion. How far Tessa Blanchard now is taking it a step further, becoming Impact World Champion. That is something that Gail Kim has always been proud. Now, if you must know, Gail Kim is the current producer for the Knockouts division. That's her job now. She's still involved, but she doesn't wrestle. And then we go to a little another down memory lane. Who could forget the Ultimate X? I know I haven't. If you guys who never seen TNA, what the hell is an Ultimate X? I'll tell you what it is. Back in the day, they had 4 poles right on top with wires, ropes crossing like an X. In the middle of the X, it's the X Division Championship. The idea was to climb and rope down and pull down the belt. This is beyond what using ladders in the time. You were not allowed to use a ladder whatsoever. It made it so brutal, so crazy, so intense. If you guys haven't seen it, please watch it. You'll be like, whoa. So it's pretty cool to talk about the Ultimate X. Then we jump in with an interview with Exhausted saying he knows what the Ultimate X, he's seen it. But has he lived it? No, but originally they were supposed to have the Ultimate X event at No Place Like Home. Sadly, it's not going to happen. It's postponed. Then we jump into a unique tag team match. We had Johnny Swinger teaming with Kid Cash versus Suicide and Manic. Now, let me pause this right here about Suicide and Manic. If you guys never heard of Suicide, he was a video game based character that originally was a video game character, and now they brought him back to life. This was like a long time ago. Now, who was behind the person who played Suicide? Now, originally it was Frankie Kazarian. He was the original Suicide. And then it was Christopher Daniels. But there did a little stint with Daniels. They're saying that, oh, he's Suicide because he did a little move that he did when he did the Ultimate X, because Suicide was ever. And that kind of brought the whole, okay, we know you're Suicide, but later we find out, oh, no, it's not him. Reason behind that was because Suicide was already, Kazarian took his role as Suicide and this and that. But Daniels was Suicide. He was the second one so far to portray this character. Now, who else played? There was this Japanese wrestler named Kiyoshi. He only played it for a short time. And from 2013 to 2016, we had TJ Perkins, who as we know him as TJP. He was Suicide for that amount of time, but at some point he became known as Manic due to the fact of a situation that took place when Hulk Hogan was running things. Someone stole the Suicide suit from TJ Perkins and used it to gain a motive to get the X Division title to drop option C. And it was Austin Aries. And that's when Hulk Hogan decided to rename Suicide into Manic. So T.J. Perkins played Manic for a long time, and that's when he stopped. And then Suicide did come back, but it was played by Jonathan Gresham. And then the final guy who played Suicide, I don't know who's the current Suicide, but the last guy was Caleb Conley from 2017 to 2019. So it's interesting that we see Suicide and TJP taking the role of Manic again. But like I said, I don't know who is playing Suicide, but I'm not sure if it's Jonathan Gresham or no Caleb Conley. I feel like it should be him or someone new. I'm not sure. But the match was great. I some great teamwork between both Manic and Suicide, and apparently they won the match. It was great, but they were supposed to be in that same Ultimate X match that it's been postponed for the no place. There's no place like home. Then they had people from the Impact roster. Do they know what King of the Mountain is? It's still confusing. Now, for all you guys at home who've never seen TNA, what the hell is King of the Mountain? That's an interesting match that I should talk to you guys. King of the Mountain is the opposite of what a ladder match is. You see, if let's go to a standard ladder match. A standard ladder match, you actually climb up the ladder, you pull down the belt, and you automatically win. Well, King of the Mountain is the opposite of that. Instead of pulling the belt, you take the belt to the top of the ladder and hang it. And when you hang it, you become the winner. But there is a certain stipulations and rules. Now, it could have multiple wrestlers. Let's say there's 5. Let's say one guy pinned this guy. If you pin him or submitted him, he's in the penalty box for 2 minutes. Kind of like hockey, if you guys watch hockey. It's the same thing. But the rules were kind of confusing at the time, and even the guys from Impact don't even know what it is. And they were going to have a King of the Mountain match. I mean, come on. It's a lot of fun. And then we see Scott Steiner, addressing a lot of people and doing his, as we call, the Steiner math. But someone had to ruin the party, and that is cancel culture's Joseph Fry. And he tells him that he was canceled, that he's offering him an opportunity to join them. But come on, Steiner's not going to do that. He's not going to join some guys who are canceling culture just because they say so. So he whooped his ass. And then we go to an interesting match that was created by Raven. You may have heard of it. The Clockwork Orange House of Fun. That one's a crazy match. Think of it as a hardcore match, but everywhere there's weapons, tables, ladders, kendos, the whole enchilada. Kinds that will leave you bruises or leave you scars. That match was supposed to be in that there is no place like home, but it's not going to happen. And Raven explained what it is, because it makes perfect sense. Because he admitted it. He's one of those guys. But after that, we had the match between Rhino and Mad Fulton. But the match ended in a disqualification thanks to Jake and Dave Chris of OVE. It became a numbers game. Tommy Dreamer tried to help, but it was on 3-on-2. But here comes Raven to help, but he stabbed Raven. And because if you must know, if you guys are ECW fans, if you don't, they're a long-time nemesis. As Raven was leaving the numbers game 2-on-3, but here comes Suicide and Manic, try to even the odds a bit. Here comes Kid Cash, Johnny Swinger, and Chase Stevens, and here comes Supermax Hernandez, and he does his Supermax off the ring, it ended like that, where TNA still stands top. Now, let me give you my final thoughts on this particular event. I enjoyed everything. Like, I wasn't much of a fan when they became Impact Wrestling because TNA was a lot more different back then, away from WWE. These guys had a six-side ring, kind of like the octagon of the UFC. They were completely different, unique, and that's what I've been a fan of TNA for, because they were a lot different. Sting said he was never a fan of the six-sided because he was more of the traditional guy. You know, the four squared circle. That's always been him. Bischoff wasn't even a fan of it when they were there in TNA. They even removed it. And now that Impact is here, when they renamed, they just went back to four-sided, the four-sided. I mean, I would love to see Impact continuing what they did as TNA with six-sided. I mean, I like the six-sided. I just enjoyed it. It was unique, different. If you guys haven't seen TNA, you should try to catch up because it's a fun era to watch. And we still got some of the veterans there. You know, like Gail Kim, Scott D'Amore, who is currently the EVP. Tommy Dreamer was in it. So was Rhino. But so yeah. So if you're not a fan of TNA, you guys should watch it. Watch many of their matches, greatest moments. Even AJ was in there. Samoa Joe, James Storm, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian. The Amazing Red was one. Kurt Angle was in there too, but this is when he left. So was Kevin Nash, Sting, all those guys. But I think the moments was before Kurt Angle and Sting, all this other stuff. But it was great. So I think that is it for now. So hope you guys enjoy this episode of Tuesday Wrestling. Stay tuned for tomorrow. I will put out the Wednesday Night War. I don't know how different this is going to be from the previous because, of course, of what's been going on. You must know, apparently, that WWE are going to take a time off for a month to take a breather after all this. I don't know about AEW, but we just got to wait and see what's going to happen. So, I must bid all of you adieu. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Goodbye. And have a nice day. Bang!